Welcome back to Living with Classic, and that's a first for me. A car that runs that doesn't have enough power to go into the workshop. It's even a V12. Luckily, I have a winch and a remote, so I've hooked that up. Let's see if it wants to pull us in. So yeah, this is a, there we go, on the winch. This is a carbureted 1975. I have to steer as well. Or 74, I think, 74, XJ12. Beautiful color combination, you'll see that in a little bit. And it's not running all cylinders. It has no power. It had a difficult time starting from cold when the customer got it. It's gotten better. Now it actually will fire up. And all I had them do was add the fuel treatment I like to use. And that worked really well. It's just like a cleaner slash octane booster, and it works pretty well for cleaning out carbs. But we're going to see why it's not on all cylinders, and I have a feeling that we have one carburetor, or possibly two, not getting a full amount of fuel. Seems like it's down at least 3 cylinders on one side, could be even more, but we'll see. But I'm getting pulled into the workshop here, and then I'll fire it up for you guys again, show you sort of what it runs like, and then we'll dig into it. For regular viewers, you know that this is one of my favorite Jags. Series 2 XJ, they're my favorite, hands down. So I have 3 of them myself, but the carbureted V12s, when they don't run correctly like this one, they're the worst, absolute worst. But once you sort them out and tune them up, they run so well. They're so nice. So this thing is pretty warmed up. It took me a while to get it running outside, and then it just doesn't have any power. So let's see. You see it's backfiring as well through some carb. And it's on some cylinders, let's say that. I have a feeling this hardly smells of anything on this side, and it's cold. I think the whole A bank is not running, and we're missing a couple of cylinders. So I think it's running on, at the moment, maybe 3 cylinders, 4. This whole bank is not running. You notice that by the smoke as well. So nothing is doing anything on this side, which is very, very odd. So we're going to shut it down, and I'll remove the air filter boxes, because once you get to those, you can actually get to plugs at the bottom of the float chambers. I don't think there's fuel in those. I think we have some stuck floats. And then we'll clean out the plugs and everything and see if we can get it running as it should. Step 1 is always with Strombergs to have a look at the diaphragms. Strombergs are a bit like SUs. They are a constantly depressed carburetor, which sounds a bit sad, but it just means that there's always a vacuum, like negative pressure in them. So the air sucking in will lift the piston, and that piston has a needle at the bottom, and it gets tapered. So the higher it goes up, the more fuel it will let in, and more air, of course. And on an SU, that's done by tightly machined surface. On a Stromberg, it's done with a diaphragm. And they have a tendency to tear. That will cause weird running issues. So we always start there, and I always start by having a look at the mixture adjustment, which you can see on the needle. It's adjusted through here. But I've done so many of these that I sort of, you know where it's supposed to be, at least to start out with. And you always have to move that fuel line out of the way. And that one as well. No, it's not a fuel line, but it's a vacuum line. And can unsnap it from here usually. There we go. There's quite a lot going on in one of these engine bays, but it really isn't too bad. And keep it, don't mess up the carb parts, know what goes where. Here is the diaphragm. This is filled with oil. That's always a good case when you see there's oil in there, because there's an O-ring at the bottom, and some it will leak out. But I can already see a hole there. Can you guys see that? So we have one bad diaphragm, and this carb has definitely been backfiring. You can see. So I'm going to open up, see what they all look like. I should have diaphragms at home. I do always have carb kits for these, but I only get the gasket kit because it's actually not that often that the diaphragm itself is bad, but sometimes it is. I'll get all these off, all 4 of them, and then there we go. I'll come back with some results on the diaphragm and the way that the mixture looks. Probably clean up in here, and then we can see if we can pop off the plug in the bottom, or that looks very dry in there. It doesn't look like there's much fuel. It must be running at least one carb, so we should be able to see fuel in one of them. Maybe we can just tap on here a little bit, get the float to unstick, and get it all working again. All right, only one of them has a bad diaphragm. So that's good, because I have 3 new diaphragms at home, so we can replace the one that's bad. If you have a look here, it's going to drip a bit of oil. You see the black ring at the bottom of the needle? When that is flush with the base, that is sort of your standard beginning to tune. So it's all really kind of rich. All of them are that far down. I think I'll just pull some plugs, because that could also be a thing where it's not running on all, and clean those up, see how dark they are, and go from there. We'll reset. Maybe someone set it really rich to get it going because the choke wasn't working, but now the choke does seem to work, a little bit at least. And you have to think about it. There's only choke on 2 carbs, one on each side. So if one of those has not had fuel running to it, that will make a difference as well. I think we'll pull clean plugs, replace one diaphragm, and go from there. One new diaphragm, and maybe you're wondering, why are you replacing all of them? Well, when I'm troubleshooting, I just replace what's broken, and then we go from there. It's not fair for the customer just for me to throw parts on it. So like when everything's fixed, I might just make a recommendation to replace the other ones, but the other ones are not broken. There was one that had a tiny pinhole. I have also used my Stromberg carburetor adjustment tool, and I've reset that so the black disc is now flush with the base. It was really, really rich. So let me do that on the other ones as well, and then we'll pull the plugs on those and see if there's actually any fuel in those 2 carbs. These are the plugs I'm talking about in the bottom of the carb. There's a little O-ring, and I pulled those, and not that much came out of those 2 carbs. A little bit did. More came out of these, so definitely we were not getting a full level in those. So I'm going to use the standard back of the screwdriver trick, tap those on the other side, and see if we can get more fuel flow to them, and then clean up the plugs, put them back inside, and fire it all back up. It's all back together, and I have primed them and knocked a carb. It seems like they're all full of fuel. Did notice one thing: the fuel pump doesn't really sound like a stock one. These have a giant double-sided SU pump. They don't completely quit like other cars with SU pumps. You know, build the pressure and then they stop. They build the pressure and then they slow down because there is a return on these with a restriction valve there. I am not hearing fuel returning. I'm looking at the tanks and I can't see that. So either that valve is broken or the pump doesn't sound correct as well. But let's just see if we can get it on 12. That's sort of the first thing for today. And then, you know, we can do other things. I might not be able to do this one-handed, but we'll give it choke and we'll see. Max choke. This is basically what I was doing outside before with it. So. Okay. We're getting all the pressure at least. My guess is that the chokes are not working really on it, but we'll see if we can get it going. All right, I'm going to give it a little bit of starting fluid, see if we can get it going, and then go from there. Got to run a little bit off camera, but the chokes are not doing anything at all. I think what we're going to do is just take off the carbs. And we'll do that with the lower manifold in place. I'll show you what that looks like. It's just because then we can replace these coolant hoses by the manifolds that always go bad on these cars. And we'll replace those and put it back together. I have a coolant hose kit on the way as well, so we can fix that. Those small hoses I always have, because when you order a fuel injected kit, sometimes you get those as well. So I have a ton of those laying around. And I think I have a gasket set for one of these as well. So we should be fine with everything. There are little orifices in the choke things. I think they're not working. And maybe we have a float issue as well. Who knows? Okay, so taking apart here. It's quite dirty in there. So it's a good thing I actually took it off. So we'll clean up that, replace the bottom O-ring and all that. Took the choke mechanism apart, but look at that. To me, that looks like water droplets. I don't know, it's hard to tell. It could also be, smell a bit fuely, I don't know. So this sits on here, And then this is the choke bit where it goes through these little orifices. They don't look super plugged, but I'll clean this up, put it back together. You see there has been water in here. So I think we'll just clean up the whole carb itself, blow out the main jet and everything, put it back together, and I'm thinking on the other side maybe we'll do the other, because the thing is initially you take them off and rebuild them all. However, we're troubleshooting, seeing what works and what doesn't. But I think we'll start here. I'm also going to take a sample of the fuel and see if there's any water in it or not. Took a fuel sample, and can you guys see that? So what's on top is fuel, the rest is water. So yeah, contaminated fuel as well. So I think 2 issues. Choke mechanism not really working, plus contaminated fuel. I'm gonna pump out the fuel, drain the tank, put in new stuff, put in de-icer stuff, and figure it out. And I guess order new tank seals. Well, with that information, I'm going to rip off all 4 carbs. On the other side, I'll do complete with the manifold so that we do these hoses. I'll do that here as well, and then I'll replace these fuel lines in between here, because you can really only get to those easily once all apart. And then I want to do all these braided lines as well. I hate braided fuel lines because they always leak. Because you put them on and you think, oh, they look great, and then they start cracking on the inside. It starts leaking on the other side. So replace all that. I think we're going to pump drain the tanks and then drain the bottoms, flush it out, and then flush everything out, the lines up here. And yeah, clean out the bottom of the carbs. And we should have a chance of this thing actually running. Well, I found another issue, and I was a bit suspicious. So I took aside the choke on the first carb I showed you before, and the thing I wasn't understanding is, I'm like, that gasket doesn't look correct. It's supposed to be this gasket, because that one's just blocking off that whole port there. So it's, let me see, it's that gasket. So I was thinking about, like, you know what? I rebuild maybe 1-2 sets of these a year. They're not as common. I work on the carburetor ones. But I was like, you know what? Let me take the other side apart. There's a correct gasket on that one. So that's also why I felt like I was only really getting chokes on one side, because it was blocking it. Oh, the things you find. I'm going to continue the rebuild. It's not really a rebuild. I'm just cleaning it up. I'm going to clean up that inside. I've already cleaned up the float chamber in the carburetor. I'm going to put the correct gaskets on. This correct gasket for there. Just making sure it fits. I'm going to clean through all the holes here. Put that back together. And do 1 more choke assembly and 2 more regular carbs. All the carbs are back on and rebuilt. Replaced all the fuel lines as well. I noticed one thing when it was running before was that fuel wasn't returning. And I took this valve off and it's working as it should. It is returning fuel. So I started to think that, the fuel pumps don't sound like they're supposed to. And yeah, someone has replaced it with aftermarket pumps. Not a fan of seeing that. The original SU pumps are great. However, we're going to try and get this to work. The fuel pressure regulator was turned down pretty much all the way. So the problem is SU pumps deliver high volume, low pressure, which is always difficult to replicate. However, in the V12 case, I think this could actually work because of the return. So the pressure is never going to get too high because it's just going to return fuel. I have bumped up the fuel pressure regulator 2 clicks, and after 2 clicks, it seems to be returning. So let me turn on the ignition and show you guys that. And it's returning a nice little trickle. So I think that's going to work just fine. Got the fuel return line hooked up, and I've run the pump on that side. I saw the fuel return to the correct tank. However, probably hasn't been used for a long time, so it was just, you know, kind of gunk and a bit of rust at first, and then it cleared up. So I will be draining that tank again. However, just have a little bit of fuel in there, about 5-10 liters. And I have water treatment in there and things just to get anything out, because there will still be water left in the fuel system, even though we've flushed the lines and everything. But these water de-icement treatments does break them down, so it will go through the engine and burn. The chokes have been set up. There was a bracket missing here for that choke cable, so I sort of made one. It's not the greatest, but it works till I can find a correct one. Other than that, everything is set up, so let's turn the key, see if it fires up. It doesn't have any coolant in it, but I want to see that we have it at least running pretty well before I continue with the coolant hoses, because they're bad. Of course, I'm not going to start replacing things until I know it actually runs nicely. But I did do the hoses on the carbs just because it's so much easier to do when the carbs are off. But yeah, the rest of the hoses are pretty bad. So if it fires up, I'm not going to run it for long. And yeah, but just really want to see what happens. This is one of those things I might need 2 hands for. But we'll give it max choke. Choke warning light comes on. And here we go. Oh, that fires up like it's supposed to. And I took the choke back 1 step. Did not like that. Just want a bit of choke. But I think we're down just 1 cylinder. So that's really an improvement. Still needs to be set up and everything. But that is definitely good enough to know that it will run. It will probably run on all. Let me see if I can figure out, see if it got better. So that's all. Now we're just missing one. Not going to run it so much longer, of course. Okay, it wants choke. But you can turn that off, and I'd call that a really good success for now. Well, that would be it for this video. I'm coming down with a bit of a cold, so I'm going to take a little bit of a break. Also, I think it's good to break up the video. It runs now. It runs a lot better. I think if it had a cooling system, it would run long enough. That one cylinder's not firing wood. Probably just some water left. The pistons are domed, but downwards, so it's really easy for moisture and fuel and stuff to stay in there. So I think give it a minute or so. That would probably come around. And everything's just set. Basically, it needs a tune. I don't know where the timing is set or anything. So a lot of that. But what I'm going to do is, until the next video, things that you've seen a ton of times, we'll do the coolant hoses. I've only done the ones by the cars, but do the other ones. I'll replace all the fuel lines in the back as well, so it's good to go. And then next time you see the car, I think we'll be ready for just some road tests, and you get to see it out and about and experience how great these Carburetor XJ12s are. But hopefully my voice is back then, and I'm feeling a little better. Hope that you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and share it with friends. And if you like V12 content, Roll British Cars, there's a ton more on the channel. I don't really know how many of these we've done, but I really, really do like them. Anyways, until next time, I'm Adam. This was Living with a Classic. I'll see you soon.